front. Trying to load it.
Yeah, check the front, mate.
Sorted. Yeah.
If you want to pop into the rear, I've got him here. Yeah.
Trying to load it.
I'm alright with you doing that. Yeah, I just want to take it from me. Is it mate,
Take his arm over there, mate. Yeah. You happy?
Just double lock it, mate. It's like conventional.
I can get in the back with him if you want. Just double belt braces.
On July 29th, 2024, a Taylor Swift-themed dance class in Southport turned into horror when 17-year-old Axel Rudakubana stormed in with a knife. In just 15 minutes, he murdered 3 young girls and tried to kill 8 more children and 2 adults. The massacre shocked the UK and exposed major failings in the PREVENT program, which had received multiple warnings about him.
It's just heartbreaking. It's just so heartbreaking.
I've got a daughter of my own, and it's just made me, I don't know what to say. Still what to say.
You're okay.
Axel Rudakubana was born on August 7th, 2006, in Cardiff, the capital city of Wales. He was the younger of 2 brothers, raised by his parents Alphonse and Letitia, who had arrived in the UK in 2002 after fleeing the aftermath of the Rwandan genocide. Both were members of the Tutsi ethnic group, which had been the primary target of a mass extermination campaign carried out by Hutu extremists between April and July of 1994. Alphonse had served as a soldier in the Rwandan Patriotic Front, while Letitia survived the genocide by hiding in a church with her family. Despite her survival, she lost her older sister and many relatives, part of the estimated 500,000 to 800,000 people slaughtered during one of the most horrific episodes of the 20th century. The Rudakubana family were devout evangelical Christians, actively engaged in their local church and well regarded within their community. During Axel's early childhood, there were no visible signs of trouble within the household. While living in a rented home in Thornhill, neighbors recalled a seemingly ordinary family. Axel was noticeably quieter and more withdrawn than his older brother Dion, but both boys were seen as cheerful and full of typical childhood mischief. Those living nearby never reported hearing arguments, violence, or anything alarming coming from the home. Alphonse and Letitia were known as friendly, well-mannered individuals who maintained good relationships with both neighbors and fellow church members. In 2013, the Rudakubana family relocated to Southport, a coastal town in Merseyside, northwest England. 5 years later, they settled into a home on Old School Close in the nearby village of Banks, roughly 5 miles from the center of town. Once again, those who interacted with the family saw nothing out of the ordinary. During this period, Axel developed a strong interest in acting, a passion his parents wholeheartedly supported. As a young boy, he was signed to a talent agency and landed several small roles. Notably, in 2018, at just 11 years old, he appeared in a Children in Need commercial dressed as Doctor Who. At Range High School in the coastal town of Formby, Axel was just another student blending into the crowd. But by September 2019, shortly after turning 13, a dramatic shift occurred. In October of that year, Axel began telling teachers he was the target of racist bullying by fellow students. Around the same time, he became increasingly disruptive in class, clashed regularly with staff, and would often walk out mid-lesson. His outbursts became so notorious that classmates began using his name as slang. When someone was about to lose their temper, they'd joke they were going to, quote, do an Axel. In October 2019, Axel made an alarming call to the NSPCC's Childline service, revealing violent thoughts and a growing fixation on harming others. During the call, he confessed to fantasizing about killing the peers who bullied him, and chillingly asked, "What should I do if I want to kill somebody?" He also disclosed that he had brought a kitchen knife to school on at least 10 separate occasions. Within days, Axel was permanently expelled from Range High School, likely due to both the contents of the call and mounting fears about his increasingly erratic and dangerous behavior. After his expulsion, Axel never returned to the mainstream education system. He was transferred between various pupil referral units, where his behavior worsened and his obsession with violence deepened. In December 2019, while enrolled at a unit in Ormskirk, Lancashire, he was asked why he had carried a knife into his former school. His response was, quote, "to use it in an IT class." That same month, staff observed him researching graphic material related to U.S. school shootings and speaking admiringly about the perpetrators. This prompted the first referral to Prevent, the UK's counter-radicalization program, designed to identify and intervene with individuals at risk of adopting extremist ideologies or engaging in acts of terrorism. When Prevent officers first interviewed Axel, they ultimately decided not to intervene. Despite clear signs of escalating risk, they concluded that he did not meet the criteria for de-radicalization support. Axel had no discernible ideological or religious motivations. He wasn't driven by a belief in divine justice, nor did he claim allegiance to any cause or extremist group. Instead, he appeared to be a deeply disturbed teenager with a growing obsession with violence and death. But because his behavior didn't align with traditional definitions of extremism, he slipped through the cracks. Just days before the school holidays in December 2019, Axel returned to his former school, Range High, armed with a hockey stick and carrying a knife in his backpack. He forced his way onto the premises and began attacking students, targeting those he believed had bullied or wronged him. One pupil suffered a broken wrist before staff managed to restrain Axel and call the police. He was arrested, charged with assault and possession of a blade, and later pleaded guilty, securing his first criminal conviction at just 13 years old. Following the attack, he was referred to the youth offending team and made to complete a course on knife crime, though it had little impact. At his pupil referral unit, Axel was openly showing classmates graphic execution and torture videos, including beheadings. He was fixated on atrocities from the Rwandan genocide and would often talk excitedly about people being hacked to death with machetes. When the COVID-19 pandemic forced the UK into lockdown in March 2020, Axel's descent accelerated. Isolated and online nearly all day, he immersed himself in violent content, watching disturbing footage of killings, reading about school shootings and terror groups, and obsessing over genocidal violence in Somalia and Rwanda. The behavior persisted throughout 2020 and into 2021. In February of that year, he came to the attention of Prevent once again, this time for online posts glorifying Libyan dictator Muammar Gaddafi. Yet even after this second contact, authorities ruled that Axel did not pose a terrorism risk, and his case was closed once more. In April 2021, just 2 months after his second Prevent referral, Axel once again raised red flags when a teacher caught him reading about the 2017 London Bridge terror attack. Prevent officers were brought in for a third time, yet once more, they concluded no intervention was necessary. Around the same period, Lancashire Police also referred Axel to the local Child Safeguarding Board, aiming to coordinate support from relevant agencies. This led to mental health evaluations, during which he was diagnosed with autism spectrum disorder. However, it's important to note, as the sentencing judge later did, that this diagnosis had no bearing on the horrific crimes he would eventually commit. It was during this time that Axel downloaded a notorious PDF titled Military Studies in the Jihad Against Tyrants, the Al-Qaeda Training Manual. The manual contained step-by-step instructions for manufacturing poisons and detailed advice on how to kill efficiently using knives, specifically recommending targeting the face and neck. Years later, Axel would carry out those exact instructions with chilling precision. By the end of 2021, his behavior at home had grown increasingly erratic and violent. In November alone, police were called twice because Axel had become uncontrollable. On one occasion, he assaulted his father and vandalized his car. Over the following year, police would return to the household twice more. Each time, Alphonse and Letitia pleaded for help, desperate for guidance on how to handle their son's spiraling violence. But no effective intervention ever materialized. By the close of 2021, Axel Rudakubana, then just 15, was already deeply immersed in a world of violent obsession. His fixation on death, coupled with fantasies of murder and access to extremist instructional material, made him an increasingly volatile threat. As 2022 began, he was no longer just fantasizing. He had begun acquiring the means to turn his thoughts into mass murder. In January 2022, Axel discreetly ordered a series of suspicious items, beakers, safety goggles, a pestle and mortar, and castor beans, delivered to a neighbor's address in what appeared to be an effort to keep his activities hidden from his parents. However, the plan was exposed when the neighbor contacted Axel's father, asking that deliveries stop being sent to their home. Using the Al-Qaeda training manual he had previously downloaded, Axel began attempting to extract ricin, a lethal toxin found in castor beans, setting up a rudimentary laboratory in his bedroom. He succeeded. When police later searched his room following his mass stabbing, they found a sealed container of crude, but still toxic ricin under his bed. Though unrefined, the amount discovered could have been fatal to an estimated 12,000 people had it been properly processed. Just 2 months later, Axel boarded a bus, refused to pay the fare, and became aggressive, prompting the driver to call police. When officers arrived and searched him, they discovered a kitchen knife in his backpack. Axel then made a bizarre and disturbing claim. He wanted to stab someone so the police would seize his phone and erase what he described as embarrassing social media videos he could no longer access. Despite the clear danger, his past behavior, and the disturbing rationale, police did not arrest him. Instead, they escorted him home and spoke with his mother about securing household knives. In May of the same year, Axel physically assaulted his father after Alphonse tried to stop him from using the computer. That same month, he stopped attending school altogether. He was now completely withdrawn, locked in his room for hours at a time, either scouring the internet for violent content or continuing his homegrown chemical experiments. By February 2023, Axel had cut off all contact with mental health services, leaving him with virtually no oversight. Over the course of that year, he began stockpiling weapons, including knives, arrows, and a machete, which would later be recovered by investigators. He remained consumed by online videos of brutal violence and mass killings, and took an obsessive interest in authoritarian regimes, including detailed studies of Nazi Germany. By early 2024, Axel's mindset had shifted. No longer content to simply absorb the atrocities committed by others, he began plotting to create his own legacy of violence. What had once been a fantasy, fueled by videos and extremist texts, was now transforming into deadly intent. In July 2024, Axel made the final decision to carry out a mass killing. Although he already had access to various weapons, he sought out a particular knife for the attack, a kitchen knife with an 8-inch blade, priced at just £17, which he ordered from Amazon. The purchase has since drawn criticism toward Amazon, as Axel was only 17 at the time and managed to bypass the platform's age verification system. The company later stated that someone over the age of 25 had accepted the delivery, presumably one of his parents. While Axel ultimately targeted a children's dance class, that wasn't his original plan. His primary obsession remained with his old school, Range High, which had expelled him 5 years earlier. He appeared to have chosen Monday, July 22nd, the final day of term, before summer break, as the date for a school massacre. That afternoon, Axel called a taxi to take him to the school, timing his trip to coincide with the end-of-day dismissal. Eerily, he was dressed in the exact outfit he would later wear during the actual attack. But before the plan could unfold, his father, Alphonse, intervened, approaching the taxi and pleading with the driver not to take his son anywhere. The driver, sensing something wasn't right, refused the fare. Axel was seen getting out of the car and walking back toward the house. Neighbors recalled seeing the two exchange words before going inside. There's no indication that Alphonse contacted police afterward, though it's likely he understood the gravity of what his son had intended to do. With school now closed for the summer, he turned his attention to finding another location, somewhere densely populated, vulnerable, and easily accessible. It's not clear how he came across it, but he eventually fixated on the Heart Space Dance Studio after likely seeing a flyer online promoting a Taylor Swift-themed yoga and dance workshop scheduled for Monday, July 29th. The event was designed for young children and promised to be a well-attended, cheerful gathering. To Axel, it was the perfect opportunity. A room full of unsuspecting victims, packed into a confined space where he could exert total control and finally carry out the mass killing he had long fantasized about. Around 9:30 a.m. on Monday, July 29th, 2024, parents in Southport were dropping their children off at the Heart Space Dance Studio located on Hart Street. 26 young girls, aged between 6 and 13, were there for a Taylor Swift-themed yoga and dance day. The event had been organized by Leanne Lucas, a local yoga instructor who had shared the flyer online weeks prior. Assisting Leanne was a qualified dance teacher named Heidi. By 10 a.m., the workshop was underway. At the same time, Axel was still at home in the nearby village of Banks, preparing for the massacre. By 11 o'clock, he was ready. Moments before leaving, he was searching online for information about the stabbing of Bishop Mari Emanuel, a brutal attack that took place in April 2024, when a 16-year-old stabbed the bishop mid-sermon. The bishop survived, but the attacker went on to stab 5 more people before being restrained. There is little doubt Axel was feeding off these images of infamy, psyching himself up, fantasizing about his own moment. At 11:10 a.m., Axel left his home. He wore a green hoodie with the hood up and a surgical mask covering his face. Concealed in his waistband was the 8-inch kitchen knife he'd purchased from Amazon 2 weeks earlier. He walked to a nearby bus stop and was seen on CCTV calling a taxi company, asking to be picked up immediately and taken to Hart Street, the location of the dance studio. Rather than wait, Axel returned home to catch the taxi when it arrived. By 11:30 a.m., he was en route to the scene. He didn't speak a word during the 30-minute ride. When they arrived, CCTV caught him exiting the vehicle without paying, his face obscured, and his weapon hidden. The driver pursued him, confronting him outside a nearby repair shop. 2 workers, Colin Perry and a colleague, stepped outside to intervene. Axel dismissed them and walked off toward the dance studio. At that moment, Leanne had briefly opened a window to let in some fresh air. She noticed a teen in a hoodie approaching, but didn't think much of it and returned to helping the girls make bracelets. The taxi driver, still trying to recover his fare, followed Axel in his car and captured him on camera as he tried to access the locked front door of the dance studio. When that didn't work, Axel found an open side entrance and climbed the stairs to the studio above. Without saying a word, Axel entered the room, pulled the knife from his waistband, and lunged at the nearest child, plunging the blade into her again and again. He moved rapidly, cutting down whoever he could reach. 7-year-old Elsie Stanham was stabbed 85 times, suffering horrific injuries to her head, neck, face, and limbs. 6-year-old BB endured 122 stab wounds, many to her head and torso, with injuries so extreme that the medical examiner believed he attempted to decapitate her. 9-year-old Alice tried to run, but was caught and stabbed 4 times in the back and struck in the head. she managed to make it out the front door before collapsing outside. Leanne and Heidi put their lives on the line to shield the girls. Leanne stood between Axel and two children and was viciously stabbed in the head, neck, back, and arm before collapsing. Heidi managed to get a girl to safety in the restroom and locked the door until help arrived. Initially, nearby office workers thought the screaming was part of the event, but then realized it was panic and pain. One looked outside and saw a child lying motionless at the entrance. He ran to alert their boss, John Hayes, who rushed outside. John encountered Axel face to face. He grabbed Axel's knife arm and fought back, but was stabbed in the thigh. The blade missed his femoral artery by mere millimeters, his life saved by the quick intervention of a colleague who stemmed the bleeding. The survivors include 7-year-old Chloe, who tried to escape but was dragged back inside and stabbed 32 times. She still managed to flee once more and collapsed outside. 10-year-old Sarah sustained 8 stab wounds, including to her chest and back. 8-year-old Danielle was stabbed once in the back, narrowly avoiding spinal damage. 9-year-old Laura suffered 3 brutal wounds that fractured her ribs, spine, and shoulder blade. 8-year-old Allison received 4 deep back wounds while running. 10-year-old Abby nearly died. Only emergency surgery and a transfusion saved her. 13-year-old Susan had 2 deep wounds, one in her shoulder and one in her back, which resulted in massive internal bleeding. And 7-year-old Emily was stabbed in the arm and slashed on the chin while fleeing. Axel Rudakubana was arrested at the scene of the Southport attack within minutes of the first emergency calls. Axel, who was still at the scene and carrying the weapon, surrendered without resistance. As he was being taken into custody, he made chilling remarks to the police, saying, quote, "I'm so glad those kids are dead. It makes me happy," and "so happy, 6 years old. It's a good thing they are dead. Yeah." When asked further, he showed no remorse, simply stating, "I don't care. I'm feeling neutral." On July 31st, Axel Rudakubana was formally charged with 3 counts of murder, 10 counts of attempted murder, and 1 count of possessing a bladed article. At the time, UK law prohibited the media from naming suspects under 18 unless permitted by the court, so his identity was initially withheld. However, on August 1st, Liverpool Crown Court lifted those restrictions, citing concerns that the anonymity was fueling misinformation and public unrest. While Merseyside police initially stated the attack was not being treated as terrorism and had no confirmed motive, that changed in October 2024. Rudakubana was hit with additional charges under the Biological Weapons Act 1974 and the Terrorism Act 2000 after investigators discovered he had produced the deadly toxin ricin and was in possession of a PDF version of the Al-Qaeda training manual. Axel initially showed no remorse, taunting the court and behaving with open disdain. However, in January 2025, he unexpectedly pleaded guilty. During sentencing, the judge described his actions as a calculated and premeditated attempt at mass murder, noting Axel had also produced the deadly toxin ricin as a backup plan. Though spared a whole life sentence due to his age at the time of the attack, Axel was given a minimum term of 52 years in prison. The judge emphasized that he likely would never be released. Following his sentencing in January 2025, Axel Rudakubana was sent to HMP Belmarsh, a high-security Category A prison in London. Due to the nature of his crimes, he has reportedly been kept in segregation to protect him from potential retaliation by other inmates, particularly because of his violence against children. On January 26th, rumors circulated on X claiming Rudakubana had been attacked in his cell at Strangeways Prison in Manchester. These reports were quickly debunked by the Ministry of Justice, which confirmed he was still at Belmarsh and had not been harmed. However, on May 8, 2025, Rudakubana allegedly assaulted a prison officer by throwing boiling water through the hatch of his cell door. The officer was hospitalized as a precaution, but released later that day. The incident reportedly followed a recent downgrade in Rudakubana's supervision level. In response, prison officials stripped him of all but the most basic legal privileges, severely limiting his time outside the cell and access to amenities. The attack is still under investigation, and questions remain about how it was able to occur, especially in the wake of a similarly violent assault by another inmate, Hashem Abedi, just weeks earlier at HMP Franklin. In the end, 3 young girls lost their lives in the attack that morning: 6-year-old BB King, 7-year-old Elsie Stankham, and 9-year-old Alice Da Silva Aguiar. Each was remembered by their families for their kindness, their laughter, and the joy they brought into the world. BB was known as a gentle soul with a big heart. Elsie was described as full of energy and creativity, and Alice as a bright, caring child who loved her friends and family deeply. Their lives were stolen far too soon, leaving behind grieving parents, siblings, and entire communities struggling to come to terms with the tragedy. While the trial and conviction of Axel Rudakubana will be remembered in news reports and legal records, what should never be forgotten are the innocent lives lost, children whose futures were meant to be filled with love, growth, and possibility. At the end of it all, this story isn't just about the violence of one individual, but about the families who now carry a permanent void and the memory of 3 young girls who should still be here today.